Representative Clyburn, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to speak with you, particularly at this moment. We're in the middle of a pandemic that I think has revealed the depths of inequality that exists in our nation like never before. We see it in who's dying from COVID-19. We see it in who's performing the essential labor to keep our country going. We see it in who's been hit hardest by the economic uncertainty. And of course, access to the internet and technology plays a critical role in those divisions. And what I think is really interesting is you were examining this issue of the digital divide and inequality when it comes to access to the internet, even before the pandemic. In 2019, you created the Rural Broadband Task Force. I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit about the genesis for that project and what was the issue you were seeing at the time that needed to be addressed?
Well, there were two big incidents that really got me going on this. The first one occurred years ago at the beginning, or let's say doing the South Carolina boycott, the NAACP boycotting state entities because of the Confederate battle flag. And at that time, way over into the boycott, Serena Williams' accountant, who I knew very well, called me and asked for some assistance because Serena had to play a tournament, which could very well violate some of the terms of that boycott, and wanted my assistance with trying to help them work through that. I jokingly said to him, I'd be glad to if you agree to give me some tickets for some of my underprivileged students to come to the tournament. She was coming to South Carolina to play down in Charleston, and that also asking for some laptops for these kids. They agreed, and when I thought I had done something really great, I went to the superintendent, told the superintendent what I had done. And we were going to get all these laptops for these kids. We couldn't get enough for every student, but we would put them in the library. And so the students could check them out like they checked out books. And I noticed she looked at me real strange. And to make a long story short, she said to me, what good will it do them to have these laptops if they don't have internet connections at home? And that's when it hit me. So I formed this broadband task force, and it's resulted in some significant legislation, which passed the House, incidentally. It didn't pass the Senate, but it passed the House in our Moving Forward Act, and I think we're going to pass it this time in the House and the Senate.
That's a good point that you bring up, Congress. You've introduced a bill last year that called for more than $100 billion to expand high-speed broadband access. But we've seen some skepticism from Republicans on some of the Democratic proposals. What do you hope and what do you think is doable to accomplish legislatively in this Congress?
I think that bill is doable. But here's what we got to do. We've got to look at these things holistically. For instance, we've already passed several pieces of legislation for broadband that would be able to allow us to reduce that $100 billion sum. We had $7 billion at one time for broadband. We got another $20 billion for broadband. All of these small tranches were included in that big $100 billion bill. So I'm expecting for us to come forward with an infrastructure bill that will treat the information highway the same way that we treat the interstate highway. And I believe very strongly that we are going to pass the Moving Forward Act, and I think that broadband is going to be an integral part of that, and I think we'll have enough money in that bill to begin to build out broadband into every home and do in the 21st century with broadband what we did in the 20th century with rural electricity.
What do you see as the FCC's role in this to address this issue? Already, we've seen acting FCC chair Jessica Rosenworcel make some moves, initially at least, to expand access to school children. What do you hope that the FCC will do in this area under a Biden administration?
Well, one of the first things I want to see the FCC do is build out the internet and be honest with what a build out means. Right now, they have determined, and I saw this number as to the number of people without broadband. That is just not true. The fact of the matter is, you cannot look at a census tract, and if one home in the census tract has got broadband, you consider the entire census tract to be covered. And that's how you hand out the information. Look, I live in South Carolina. I live in a part of this country whose whole economy was built based way back to slavery on plantations and farmland. So you're going to tell me that when the big house has the internet and all those small houses around it's got nothing, you consider all of them to have the internet. That's what that policy says. That's ridiculous. So what we've got to do, first of all, is to be very honest with what the problem is so that we can solve the problem. We are not going to solve the problem by misrepresenting what it really is. And that's the first thing I think they've got to do.
What about the roles of private companies and local governments? How can they play a part?
That's another big issue because way back several years ago, when we started pushing the state legislature here to do what is necessary to allow state and local governments to get into this business. And I won't name all of them here today, but we got them involved. And then here come the big guys. They got legislation passed that prevented a lot of local governments from providing internet access to their citizens. That, to me, has got to stop. I don't care who it is. And I'm a big supporter of a lot of these companies, but that has got to stop. We've got to make broadband accessible and affordable.
COVID has both deepened the digital divide and also brought it to the forefront of the national conversation. Is there anything that feels different about this moment in terms of momentum to tackle this issue? And is there anything about this moment that's particularly concerning for you when it comes to the digital divide?
I think this moment is different. Look, I didn't go out and work for Joe Biden in a vacuum. When COVID-19 hit and I saw the impact of it, it revealed a lot of things. I've got two young grandchildren. When I had this discussion with Joe Biden, I explained this to him. And he is different about it. He is going to push the internet as a part of infrastructure going forward. So we're not going to have adequate delivery of healthcare if we do not have telemedicine or telehealth, whatever we want to call it. You aren't going to be able to educate our children unless they have access to online learning. We aren't going to be able to keep an economy going forward unless we are able to work from home. All of these things require the internet. And until we get to where we need to be, we've got to create these hotspots so that local communities can begin to involve themselves, not at the fast food place, but maybe at the local family center of the churches in the neighborhood, or other private nonprofit entities where people can go and be a part of the internet until we get it built out in their homes. That's what we've got to do. That's what we're going to do with this administration. That's why it feels different.